The Dark Passenger. At the entrance of the town, there was an old, rusted, and forgotten bus stop. No one used it anymore. Children were warned never to approach it, and even the elderly shuddered when they spoke of it. Because every year, on the same day, at midnight, a bus would appear at the stop that no one should see, and those who boarded it never returned. This event was told as a legend by the townspeople. Some of the older residents believed the story, while others saw it as just a simple urban myth. That was until 4 university students decided to solve the mystery. "Come on, it's just a legend. We have the chance to prove it," said Arda, challenging his friends. Merv crossed her arms nervously. "Even if it's a myth, there are stories of people disappearing. What if it's actually true?" Khan smiled mockingly. "What if it's false? Then we'll just tremble in fear for one night. But at least we'll know the myth isn't real." Sem nodded. "I think we should do it. After all, no one has really tried it. Maybe someone just made up this story to scare the townspeople." Finally, the 4 friends made a pact to meet at the bus stop at midnight. Their plan was simple: wait and see if a bus would show up. If it did, they would get on, ride for a short while, and try to get off. Just like a regular night bus. At 11:55 p.m., when the 4 young people arrived at the stop, the air had suddenly grown cold. Normally, summer evenings were cool, but tonight, there was an eerie chill in the air. There was no wind, and even the insects were silent. Everything was unnervingly still. 11:59 p.m. The town was asleep, but the sound of an engine from afar sliced through the night. An old, black bus, raising dust, approached the stop. Its headlights were dim, and the windows were so dark that the inside was invisible. None of them could see where the bus had come from. At that moment, a sense of hesitation grew inside everyone. The door of the bus creaked open. A damp, musty smell wafted out from within. The driver was nowhere to be seen. Arda gathered his courage and called inside. "Is anyone there?" There was no answer. But from within came a deep, wheezing breath. Merv stepped back. "This might not be a good idea." Khan laughed and shrugged. "We came here for this. If you're scared, turn back." And Khan stepped forward. Then Sem and Arda followed him. Merv hesitated but didn't want to leave them alone, so she boarded last. The moment the door closed, it slammed shut with such force that it startled the passengers. Arda reached for the door, but there was no use trying to open it. The bus started moving. "All right, the joke's over. Can we get off now?" Sem said, trying to laugh nervously. The driver didn't respond. It was then they realized that they couldn't see outside through the bus windows. Moments ago, they could make out the town's roads, streetlights, and trees, but now the outside was nothing but black void. Merv held her breath, gripping Sem's arm. Where is this going?" The driver slowly turned his head toward them. And that was when they saw it. He had no face. Empty sockets for eyes, skinless, lifeless flesh, and no lips, a mouthless grin. He looked at them, and in a hushed, raspy voice, spoke. Now you're one of the passengers." The bus picked up speed. Some of the seats seemed to collapse as though invisible people were sitting in them, and muffled whispers filled the air. Arda panicked and began pounding on the windows. "Stop. We want to get off." But the windows were as hard as stone. As their screams echoed inside the bus, the young people slowly slumped into their seats. Their skin faded, their eyes went lifeless. Even their breaths could no longer be heard. After a while, the bus suddenly stopped. The doors opened, but outside was only an endless darkness. Then, one of them, against their will, began to move. Khan realized he couldn't control his legs. His eyes widened in fear, but no sound came from him. He walked forward into the darkness, and the moment he stepped into it, a scream echoed. Khan suddenly vanished. One by one, the others stood up. They tried to protest, to escape, but their bodies wouldn't listen. Another scream rang out, and the bus continued on its way. Days passed, weeks went by. The townspeople noticed the young people were missing. The police conducted investigations, but no trace was found. The cameras around the stop hadn't recorded anything that night. It was as if nothing had happened. Years later, one midnight, as the old black bus passed through the town, a man carefully looked at the window. Inside, one of the passengers was staring at him eerily. And that face, it looked so much like Khan's. A faint whisper was heard. "The next passenger is you." Beyond the town, the towering Karaorman mountain was perpetually shrouded in mist. Once a favored spot for hunters and explorers, it had become infamous for mysterious disappearances. People feared venturing there. But four friends, Salim, Khan, AJ, and Melis, dismissed the stories as myths. Seeking adventure, they decided to spend a night in an old mountain cabin. Their journey felt like being swallowed by the mist. As they stepped out of the car, a strange chill filled the air. The silence was so profound that even their breathing echoed. The old wooden cabin stood before them, its windows shattered, and its rusted door hinges barely holding. Inside, the walls were adorned with old hunting rifles and animal skulls. But the most peculiar thing was an aged, moldy journal placed at the center of a dusty table. AJ picked up the journal. Its pages were yellowed, and the ink was fading. However, some sentences remained legible. "If you hear the whispers, do not respond. If your reflection speaks to you, do not look. After midnight, no matter who knocks, do not open the door." Ken chuckled and took the journal. "Is this it? I expected something scarier," he scoffed. Salim admitted feeling uneasy, but the others brushed off his concerns. As night fell, the cabin's atmosphere grew eerier. While they sat around the stove, sipping hot chocolate, a faint whisper came from outside. The sound drifted from the mist. No one was speaking, yet the whispers persisted. The words were indistinct, but clearly someone, or something, was murmuring. "Maybe it's just the wind," Melis suggested nervously. But then, a loud knock shattered the silence. Knock, knock, knock. Everyone froze. AJ remembered the warning in the journal. "No matter who knocks, do not open the door." No one moved. They exchanged anxious glances. Moments later, slow, dragging footsteps echoed outside. Summoning courage, Ken peeked through the window into the mist. "There's nothing there," he whispered. But when he turned back, his reflection in the mirror was grinning at him, though he hadn't smiled. Suddenly, the reflection began whispering. Its lips didn't move, but it spoke. "You must run. But it's too late." At once, the cabin erupted into chaos. Doors slammed open and shut, the stove extinguished on its own, and an eerie wailing echoed from above and below. Bloody handprints appeared on the walls. "We need to get out," Salim shouted. But when they opened the door, the outside was pure darkness. The mist was so thick they couldn't see more than a few steps ahead. Worse yet, shadowy figures loomed within it. They had no faces, but their mouths stretched into terrifying, unnatural grins. And now, the whispers were crystal clear. "You do not belong here. But now, you are ours." AJ screamed and stepped back. But Melis was gone. "Melis," they called, but only the whispers responded. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed through the cabin. "Melis." Her voice came from above. Despite their fear, the others raced up the stairs. But Melis was trapped inside a mirror, pounding against the glass, eyes wide with terror. She begged, "Get me out." Salim reached for the mirror, but Melis's face twisted into something monstrous. Her eyes turned pitch black, and an eerie grin stretched across her face. A clawed hand shot out from the glass and grabbed Salim's wrist. He screamed and yanked himself away. The whispers grew deafening. The mirrors cracked, the walls trembled, and the house seemed to be imploding. The friends bolted outside, only to find the misty figures waiting. There was nowhere to run. As they vanished into the fog, only their fading screams remained. The next morning, a group of hunters trekked to the abandoned mountain cabin. When they entered, the house was eerily empty. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of the missing friends. Only a dusty, moldy journal lay on the floor. On its final page, a chilling message was scrawled. "If you're reading this, leave immediately. When the mist returns, you will never escape." Once upon a time, nestled at the foot of a distant mountain, there lay an old village that few dared to enter. Its streets seemed to have been swallowed by centuries of neglect and silence. Yet, as night began to fall, the dark forest behind the houses would start whispering an ancient secret. Outside the village stood the silhouette of a dilapidated mansion. The locals called it the Palace of Shadows. According to legend, the spirits of the family who once lived there had never found peace after death. The curse had condemned them to relive the same tragedy through the generations. On every full moon night, pale light seeping from the mansion's windows filled the villagers with dread, while eerie whispers in the darkness sent shivers down their spines. At the mansion's door, hidden behind weathered wooden panels, mysterious marks from long ago could be seen. Curious young souls would venture near the mansion, yet the midnight silence mixed with screams and foreboding forces always forced them to retreat. Many had vanished on those dark nights, leaving behind nothing but the echoes of their agonized cries. One day, a writer named Emre, who had recently moved to the village, decided to uncover the truth behind this legend. Through old documents, diaries, and local folklore, he discovered that the mansion's owner had been the victim of a dark secret. The family had been ensnared by a curse that doomed them to experience the same tragedy generation after generation, leaving their souls unrestful. Determined to unravel the mystery of the curse, Emre set out for the mansion under the cover of night. He walked along paths cloaked in mist and darkness, his heart pounding with both curiosity and fear. Under the faint gleam of the moon, he finally reached the mansion. A cold breeze seeping through the gap in the door seemed to herald the presence of death itself. Stepping inside, he was greeted by faded portraits, dust-covered furniture, and relics that bore the scars of time, all whispering untold stories of the past. As Emre ventured deeper into the mansion, he sensed a sudden chill and heard a soft whisper. At first, he dismissed it as the wind playing tricks, but the whispers soon grew clearer. "Help us." His heart raced in terror. The whispers echoed through narrow corridors and dim rooms, each step resonating with the desperate cries of past victims. When a narrow beam of light slipped through the gap of a long-sealed door, his curiosity and courage overcame his fear, compelling him to enter. Inside the room, time seemed to have stood still. An old table, a broken chair, and cryptic inscriptions etched into the walls told silent stories of despair. On the table lay a dusty journal, recounting the mansion's history, the family's tragedy, and the details of the curse. Yet as he read on, the ink slowly changed hue, as if stained with red, an ominous warning of a cursed prophecy. At that very moment, a cold whisper emanated from the final page of the journal. The room was engulfed by an icy presence that sent shivers down Emre's spine. Shadows on the walls seemed to come alive, silently circling around him. He began to believe that the account in the journal was no mere tale. It was a living, breathing curse, one that embodied real agony and despair. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. Panic seized Emre, and he frantically tried to force the door open, but it was as if an unseen power had sealed it shut. The silence of the night deepened into a more harrowing stillness, as fear and helplessness overwhelmed his mind. Then, from a dark corner of the room, a pale face emerged. Its eyes were filled with deep sorrow and pain, and with a cold whisper, it uttered, "Do not forget us." It was as if a spirit long departed from this world was making its final plea. Trembling with terror, Emre recoiled, yet the apparition seemed determined to draw nearer. In the hours that followed, as the night slowly yielded to dawn, Emre found himself trapped within the mansion, beset by mysterious, unexplainable phenomena. In every room and along every corridor, the dark tales of the past came to life, and the haunting memories of the curse echoed with every step. Whispers from beyond time began to seep into his soul. There was no escape from the cursed mansion. He had become a part of its endless nightmare. As the first light of dawn appeared, the villagers noticed faint glimmers emanating from the mansion's doorway. Yet none dared to approach for fear of discovering Emre's fate. From within the mansion, anguished cries and ghostly whispers still resonated. From that day onward, the village became shrouded in a horror legend, a tale of cursed, lost souls hidden behind the shadows, passed down from one generation to the next. Emre's disappearance added a dark new chapter to the village's forgotten history. Every full moon thereafter, the pale light spilling from windows and the echoes of whispers in the streets confronted the villagers with the long-buried secrets of the past. The curse remained, an enduring symbol of unending sorrow, an unforgettable tragedy, and the silent cries of lost souls.